doctors and physiologists and biochemists, every one of them trace the health decline of America to when bread started being fractured.
You're listening to the Digest This podcast, and I'm your host, Bethany Cameron. Can you heal autoimmune disease, gut issues, asthma, sinus issues, and restore vitamin deficiencies, all from making your own freshly milled bread? Well, that's the claim of Sue Becker, who has disrupted the industrial bread making industry with her freshly milled bread recipes. Sue and her family are living proof that you can eat gluten, carbs, and enjoy bread again, all while improving your health and immune system by the way you make your bread, even if you can't have gluten. Industrial bread and flour on the store shelves are not what you think, and today we're exposing and explaining why that is. We talk all about how enriched flour is a scam and actually making your health worse and creating an imbalance. Not to mention these, quote, vitamins added are actually synthetic. Sue also shares her secret in how to make freshly milled bread, and all you need is a grain mill to make muffins, tortillas, pancakes, waffles, and yes, bread. You don't have to be a baker to make such a simple staple in everyone's home. Everything you need to know is shared in today's episode. I recently did a parasite cleanse, and the first few weeks especially, I was having severe cramps in my legs. So I asked my naturopath why I was getting severe cramps, and they told me it was because when we detox, our bodies are basically stripped with minerals. So that's when I started to put 2 packs of Element in my water. And when I mean 2 packs, I mean like 1 pack in a large thing of water. I drank it. And then I did a 2nd pack in another clean jug of water. That made such a difference. I was obviously drinking more water, which Element helps me do anyways, but I was also replenishing my body with essential minerals I was lacking due to the cleanse. Guys, this was intense. I'm not gonna lie, but staying hydrated with the proper minerals made it a bit more bearable. And I know not all of you are doing parasite cleanses or cleanses at all, but since it's summer, it's even more important to stay hydrated. So Element is offering a free 8-count sample pack of their most popular drink mix flavors with any purchase at drinkelement.com/digest. Element also has a no questions asked refund policy, so you can try it totally risk-free. If you don't like it, they will give you your money back, no questions asked. You have nothing to lose. Go to drinkelement.com/digest or click the link in today's show notes. That's drinkelement.com/digest. Equip Foods just launched a protein bar in 2 flavors, chocolate and mixed berry. And believe it or not, they sold out the first week of launching, but they sent me some to try even before they announced it. And let me tell you, these bars are legit, packed with 20 grams of pure, complete protein. Forget the syrups, lecithins, and mystery binders. Equip Foods' new Prime protein bars are made with whole food ingredients you can recognize and trust, like dates, honey, cacao powder, and grass-fed beef tallow. No refined sugar, no seed oils, no stevia or monk fruit, just real food. This is the first protein bar with colostrum, nature's most complete superfood. It supports gut health, immunity, and recovery, especially beneficial for those with sensitive digestion or demanding lifestyles. These are gut-friendly, bloat-free, and contain no whey, no milk solids, no seed oils, and of course, are just pure, real food packed in a bar. They are third-party tested for heavy metals, microplastics, glyphosate, and other contaminants. Needless to say, you need to get your hands on them because they are selling out left and right. Secure yours by going to equipfoods.com/digest and use code DIGEST to get 20% off your entire order. This code is good on anything from Equip Foods, like their grass-fed collagen, Prime beef protein, and of course, their new protein bars. Again, go to equipfoods.com/digest and use code DIGEST for 20% off. Okay, Sue. So,
All right.
I like to start my podcasts with some rapid fire yes or no questions. And you can only answer yes or no. Are you ready?
Uh-oh. Okay, I'll try. That's
All right, there's
pretty
a
hard
few
for
here.
me.
Okay, and then we can dive in. But all right, just to pique my listeners' interest here.
All
All
right.
right, first question. Can you lose weight eating bread?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say.
All right. Can people heal asthma, sinus issues, chronic headaches, and digestive issues by eating a certain type of bread?
Yes.
Is gluten the enemy?
No.
Is typical sourdough the healthiest bread out there?
Not necessary. No.
No. Okay. I'm curious now. Are all breads on store shelves destroying our gut?
Yeah, I have to. Yes, with a clarification.
With an asterisk?
Yeah, in most big commercial grocery stores, I would say yes. If it's big commercially produced, yes.
Okay. All right. Last question. Is all flour, including organic and sprouted, stripped of nutrients?
Mm, no, with a clarification later.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
get into it.
Yeah.
All right. So, Sue, you claim that we can see significant health improvements by consuming freshly milled bread. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yes, it is, but I've seen it for myself for 33 years, well, 34 years.
Wow.
I was introduced to the whole concept of milling my own grain and making my own bread in 1991 because of a publication I subscribed to. I learned that I was already eating healthy food for the most part, real food, real meat, real vegetables, real, everything except for my bread. And I knew whole grains were healthier, but I didn't totally understand the stuff that was offered to me in the store, and it didn't bake up very nicely. So what I learned was that real whole grains are the healthiest food God has given us, and but only when they're freshly milled do they retain all of their vital nutrients. And I learned that prior to the 1900s, America was a fairly healthy country, and most of the bread consumed in this country was made from freshly milled flour and was made at home. And I learned, and this was what really opened my eyes as a food science major, a food scientist, that enriching that they're doing to our flour is not really a favor at all. They're merely putting a few nutrients back in for the multitude that are lost when they strip the bran and germ away. And in all of my studies over the years, I've learned that of the, say, 44 to 46 absolutely essential nutrients that our body needs for health and well-being, there's only 4 missing in wheat. That's pretty amazing. So that's how nutrient dense wheat is. Vitamin A, vitamin C. So eat your fruits and vegetables, right? Vitamin D, get out in the sunshine. And then B12 is not typically found in abundance in any plant food. But in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, God gave us 2 kinds of foods. He says, I've given you plants that bear fruit with the seed in it. That's your fruits and veggies. And then I've given you plants that bear seed as your food. That's your grains, your beans, your nuts, your seeds. And he gave us these for a reason, because fruits and vegetables, they give us some great nutrients, but what happens to them over time? They decay and they rot every day, right? But not so with seeds. They're storable and they retain all of their nutritional value if you leave them whole and intact. So that's the great thing about grains.
Okay, so I have so many questions. So you're saying, first of all, that all of these grains in their whole form contain everything except for those 4 nutrients that we can get. So is it a complete protein then?
A little bit missing. Grains are a little bit low in lysine, and beans contribute those. Beans are a little bit low in methionine, but grains contribute those. So grains and beans, so your seeds together, if you're eating them together and combined, you'll get all of your proteins. And that's Yeah, a lot of people don't realize they call grains, and beans a carbohydrate, but there's a lot of protein there.
So you're saying they contain all 9 essential amino acids.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And now also, I want to talk about like the history of bread in the bread industry because um, I I know there's a correlation between like um, the vitamin deficiencies and the rise of industrial bread.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you can trace it. Prior to the 1900s, America was considered one of the healthiest of the industrialized nations. Now we're like 93 or 99. We're one of the sickest, chronically sick nations of the industrialized world. So here's what happened grains are a seed. And like I've been saying, if you keep them whole and intact, they retain all of their nutritional value. But once you break that seed open, say mill that kernel of wheat into flour, oxidation begins to take place. And a lot of that oxidation begins to take place right after milling. So those oils start going rancid and oxidation uses up vitamins and minerals, just like in your fruits and vegetables, but we don't understand that. So prior to the 1900s, they realized the flour would spoil with that because the germ of your seed is loaded with vitamin E. That's where your wheat germ is. And it's loaded with essential fatty acids. That's another thing a lot of people don't realize. Grains and beans have fats. They contribute fats. So anyway, so when you break that kernel of grain open, you mill it into flour, oxidation takes place, the flour begins to go rancid and spoil, as well as losing some of its nutritional value. Well, in the late 1800s, someone discovered if we sift the very nutrient-rich bran away that has a lot of your B vitamins, your fiber, your proteins, if we sift that away, and then if we sift that oil-laden germ away, that flour won't spoil. If we leave just the endosperm, which is the white flour, which is for all practical purposes, protein and starch. That's all it is. So you've lost all the fiber, all the vitamins, all the minerals for the most part, but this white flour won't spoil. So this was considered a revolutionary discovery, led to the invention of these huge steel roller mills, totally displaced the local millers, and all those mills, stone mills, went out of business. They moved out to the wheat fields, and then white flour and white bread became food for the masses in around 1900. And by 1910, it was pretty much the food of the day. And so that's what happened to commercial flour milling, was taken out of the home, taken out of the local communities. Communities used to be built up around the miller. I always marvel when I'm driving around my home area here. There's so many mill roads: Rope Mill Road, Pools Mill Road, Howell Mill Road, Sewell Mill Road. Mills were there, communities were built up around it. So here's what happened though. So this white flour now, for the first time in the history of the world, becomes food for rich and poor alike. Everybody is now eating it. Everybody's like, hallelujah, it makes white fluffy bread. It's softer texture. It tastes good, tastes better. And so what happened then, 3 diseases became epidemic shortly after. In beriberi was a vitamin B1 deficiency. It results in nervous disorders. Pellagra was another. It's a vitamin B3, niacin, nicotinic acid deficiency. It's known as the disease of the 4 Ds: dermatitis, dysentery, dementia, and death. And we're talking significant issues. In fact, I live in the Atlanta area, and the first case of pellagra was actually diagnosed here in Atlanta, I think in 1905. I can never remember if it was 1902, 1905. 30,000 cases in that first year, and that was pellagra. Mental institutions articles that I read said in Georgia and South Carolina, literally overflowing. They did not have enough beds to house the patients. Troubled them, couldn't figure out what was going on, what's happening with these 2 diseases. And anemia actually started coming up more and more and more. They traced it to the new white flour and the missing nutrients that were no longer there, because the bran and germ is where all those good 44 nutrients are, and not to mention the fiber. So they went to the millers and urged them to put the bran and germ back in. The millers are like, no, we're selling it to the cattle feed industry, the animal feed industry. We're not going to lose that business. So they chose, about 30, 40 years go by. Took until 1948 for the government to step in and say, you've got to fix the flour. So they mandated an enrichment process for the 35, 40, who knows how many nutrients are lost when you take away the bran and the germ. They put 3 B vitamins and iron back in. No, none of the vitamin E was put back in, and those 3 B vitamins and iron. It would take 50 years for them to watch the rising incidence of birth defects before they would come back and say, we lost one of our richest food sources of folic acid. So they said, or folate is the natural form, folic acid synthetic. So they did mandate in 1998 that they had to put the folic acid back in. Herein lies the problem. These are synthetic vitamins out of the context that God put them in there. And, one thing, I just did a podcast on the B vitamins. They kind of occur in food as a family. And to take 1 or 2 out of context and supplement those can cause even greater problems. And
I
then,
was just, go ahead.
Well,
No, I was
then because of the residual oils in that flour from the germ, the flour kind of started yellowing. So, oh my goodness, we can't have yellow flour. So they started bleaching the flour. Did you hear the key word? Bleach. A chlorine derivative, nitrogen trichloride, was used for more than 25 years till they discovered that it caused seizures in dogs, ADD and hyperactivity. Are you catching my drift? So look where we've come today. So they did take nitrogen trichloride off the market, but a chlorine derivative is still being used today. Benzoyl peroxide is being used also as a bleaching agent. It's known to destroy B vitamins and destroy vitamin E and to cause respiratory issues. And then potassium bromate, liver and thyroid issues to help the stretchiness, the gluten structure of the bread. So here is what has happened. No amount of enriching has replaced the fiber and all those vitamins and vitamin E, and it's just not going to happen. And it's so interesting over the years as I read different doctors and physiologists and biochemists, they're not talking at all about milling your own grain, but every one of them trace the health decline of America to when bread started being fractured, is what they call it. I mean, it's amazing, the different people, Abram Hoffer, Dr. Wilfred Shute, Adele Davis. They didn't write books on milling your own grain. But they all say heart disease wasn't an issue. Cholesterol wasn't an issue. Mental issues weren't an issue. It goes on and on.
You even said anemia, and a lot of people think anemia is from lack of meat, but it's really iron and copper. And of course, 44 nutrients were taken out. And as you had mentioned, when they put certain nutrients, just a few back in, one, it's out of balance. So if anyone knows, if you don't have, vitamin D without vitamin C and calcium, like it all works together. So when you take something and put just 1 or 2 back in, it is out of balance. You have issues. And then I love that you used air quotes when you said, the vitamins that are put back in, because it's all synthetic.
Yes.
And it's not the same. And a lot of people don't realize that. And a lot of people gravitate towards when they see something called enriched, even like enriched milk, enriched flour, all of that stuff. And my husband and I, we stay away from anything that says enriched. And if it doesn't have vitamin A, guess what? We're still eating it because at least we know we're getting our vitamin A or whatever from other things. We don't have to get all these vitamins from, quote, enriched things.
Yes, and I always tell people the reason it's enriched is they've destroyed what was naturally there. And that's something you've got to understand. Vitamin C enriched orange juice or calcium enriched orange juice. Did you know there's as much calcium in one orange as there is in a glass of milk? A lot of people don't know that, and so they enrich it because they destroyed it and they're trying to fix health issues, but you can't improve on what God already made. So, and you're right. And taking synthetics, especially taking the B vitamins out of context, it typically makes you need more of the other B B vitamins. It throws everything out of whack. And it's interesting that you mentioned anemia. We've had so many people, one lady, transfusions, painful iron transfusions most of her life, and within a month or two of eating the bread, she no longer has to have those. And she goes, this is amazing, because not only do whole grains typically supply the iron, but vitamin E is so important. It protects every cell in your body. And I always tell people, genetics might determine your weak link, where your cells are going to fall apart first. But if every cell in your body, or if different cells in your body are weakened, what if it's your red blood cells, that are breaking down faster than they can be produced because you don't have vitamin E protecting that cell? No amount of iron supplementation is going to protect, is going to correct that anemia, if that's what the problem is. You see what I'm saying? I've just never seen one food bring so many diverse health benefits to different people, from not just bowel issues, but all kinds of anemia,
Yeah.
and
Well, you
it's
bring
just
up
amazing.
So you bring up such a great point, is because I'm just going to use like milk and like dairy, for example, because the whole milk, whole fat yogurt, all that's thankfully coming back as a quote trend. So people are opting for that because they know all of the vitamins are there. And if you look and compare whole milk to fat-free milk, you'll see nothing is added to the whole milk, but in the fat-free milk, it says added vitamin A palmitate, vitamin D, because they have to for the fat-free. So as an example, whole milk is mostly better, right? So whole grains, it would make sense because it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when Jesus said to them, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds forth from the mouth of God, they knew what he was saying. And he is basically, to me, reiterating that you could live off of bread physically. And they knew that. And many, many cultures, grains and beans are what people live on. Bread is the staff of life. And so he was saying, you think just because you have bread, you can live, but I'm telling you, there's another aspect of living, and that's your spiritual life. So, and Jesus compared himself to bread. So it's pretty powerful.
Reality is, modern life is full of hidden stressors. Poor nutrition can stress out and tax your body. Environmental toxins can also stress out the body. There's so much that can drain our energy and focus without us even realizing it. And by the time we do realize it, it's often harder to get back into balance. Armor Colostrum is nature's original performance upgrade, packed with over 400 bioactive nutrients that fortify gut health, strengthens immunity, and ignites metabolism at the cellular level. It's not just about feeling good, it's about sustaining the clarity, resilience, and longevity needed to make smarter decisions and stay ahead of the game. Armra has been a partner of mine for almost 3 years straight, and I've worked out a special offer for my audience. You can receive 15% off your first order. Just go to tryarmra.com/digest or enter digest to get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/digest. Okay, so what about those with gut issues that can't have gluten or grains or the germ, or they have digestive problems? What would you say to those people?
Well, we are finding hundreds and hundreds of people that have been diagnosed with sensitivities or self-diagnosed with gluten issues, can't eat the bread in the store. Listen, I can't eat the bread in the store, and I don't have a gluten issue, but we all have commercially processed bread issues. But here's the problem. So gluten is not even in grains, technically. Gluten is formed from two unique proteins that are very specific, two specific proteins that are unique to the wheat family. And guess who put them there? God put them there. When you wet wheat flour or any of the wheat family of grains, those two proteins form this stretchy substance called gluten. That's all gluten is. It's from two proteins, glutenine and gliadin. So the problem is, though, in the commercial industry, where did I tell you those proteins are located? in the endosperm. So what you're eating commercially in the store is protein and starch without the vitamins, without the minerals, without the fiber to help you keep moving things along. And then also in the commercial industry, they discovered that it's those two proteins, of course, that form that stretchy substance. When you make yeast bread, yeast produces carbon dioxide gas when it feeds on the carbohydrates and whatever in the grain or even in the honey or whatever, produces carbon dioxide gas. Those stretchy strands of protein are necessary to trap that gas and enable the bread to rise. So that's why wheat is the king of yeast bread making and has been since the beginning of time because of that stretch. So what's happening today in the commercial industry, you can wash that wheat in a vat until it disintegrates everything but those two proteins, and you get this stretchy mass. They dehydrate it, powder it, and it is sold as gluten. And in the food industry, it's not considered flour. Go check your white bread label and you'll see enriched white flour, but third or fourth ingredient, gluten. They're adding even more to
I've
it.
seen that. I've
And
seen that
even
before. Yeah.
the 100% whole grain bread, read those labels, third or fourth ingredient. They have to start with, well, they call it real whole grain flour. I don't. But anyway, they have to start with that. But the third or fourth ingredient, they're adding more gluten to that. So do you see it's out of balance? We're eating it out of the ratio that God intended without the bran and germ and without the fiber to keep the gut clean and moving. Commercially milled flour is constipating and causes severe bowel issues. And people can't break it down very well. Also, we have protein digestive issues in this country. That's something a lot of people don't realize. You know, proteins are digested in the stomach. They have to have a acid environment to be digested and broken down. But what are we taking? We're taking antacids. So we're alkalizing our stomach acid. When proteins aren't broken down adequately, they get dumped, they pass through our system, get dumped in our digestive system and cause all kinds of issues. But what we're finding is that when people, now, let me clarify this. There is such a thing as true genetic celiac disease. But I'm also learning something recently. Now, it is genetic. You're born with those genes, but they can be turned on or they can stay turned off. So what's turning them on possibly? And maybe for all these years of teaching, I've said genetic celiac can't be reversed. I don't know. I'm reconsidering that. But anyway, so there is such a thing, genetic celiac disease. But you know how many people it affects in America? Less than 1%. 0.8% of people have true genetic celiac disease. What everybody else has is non-genetic celiac disease. And we are finding hundreds of testimonies of people that they can't eat the white bread. I'm talking some double over in pain, can't leave the home, can't leave the bathroom, going 10 times a day. They're finding when they go to freshly milled flour, even though it has those gluten-forming proteins, they go to wheat, it has all those other nutrients as well as the fiber to heal their gut, get their bowels moving. And they not only, I tell people, they don't just tolerate freshly milled wheat, they thrive and they get healthy. I've had people come to me and say, I was down to eating 7 foods. And this is what I hear all the time. When people go on very restrictive diets, especially gluten-free diets, especially if they fall for the gluten-free products in the store, those are not healthy.
Those are worse,
They
feel
are worse. Yeah, they are worse than just, if you're going to go gluten-free, just eat brown rice and beans, But their studies are showing it's diminishing your good gut microbiome and actually encouraging the growth of pathogenic ones, making you more susceptible to C. diff and E. coli and some of these other harmful organisms. So I've had people, and then what I find is when they go on these restrictive diets, their digestion gets compromised, their gut organisms get compromised, and the next thing they know, they can't eat eggs, they can't eat milk, They can't eat dairy. They can't eat this. I had a lady come in my store and tell me with tears in her eyes that she was down to 7 foods was all she could eat. And she just hugged me. Had a lady just 2 weeks ago, 8 foods. She, with tears in her eyes, hugged me and she says, "You saved my life." And I'm like, "I didn't. God's perfect food did." Because what they find is that good fiber. And another protein found in wheat is glutamine. I don't know if you've ever had digestive issues. Holistic doctors will put you on glutamine supplements. It's healing to the gut. Don't let anybody tell you that whole grains and the fiber there is harmful and abrasive. It is very healing, and people are getting their life back. The next thing they know, they can eat dairy and they can eat milk, and their gut is healed. They don't have headaches. They don't have all the pain and suffering that they had prior to going gluten-free, and then even going gluten-free. It didn't heal them. A doctor that I like to quote, he says the heavy use of antibiotics, pain, non-steroid pain relievers like Advil and Aleve,
Tylenol and
antacid,
like all those,
Tylenol, all of those antacids like Prilosec and Nexium, coupled with the high sugar, low fiber diet, is causing gluten sensitivities and even celiac disease. I totally agree. The problem is, he goes on and says, the biggest problem is wheat. I'm like, wait a minute. You did not say wheat caused all that. You said all these things. How about we get rid of the need for all of those things? I haven't had a pain reliever. I hurt my shoulder. I tell this story last year, and I keep a little bottle of Advil around. And when I found it, because I had to take something just to be able to teach class, it had expired in 2017. This was 2024 that I hurt my shoulder.
Oh my gosh.
I hadn't needed anything. I've not had an antihistamine or a decongestant. I lived on them prior to the bread. I've not had one since 1991. These are the things that I'm seeing. My children, 25 years of raising 9 children, they only needed 2 doctor visits and 2 times of antibiotics. Did you hear what I just said? Some people go more than that in a week taking their children. The kids are living on antihistamines and decongestants and asthma, breathing treatments and all these things. So I tell everybody, my story is, the only thing I changed in my diet in 1991 was we introduced bread made from freshly milled flour. I made all of our bread, cakes, cookies, pancakes, muffins, whatever. We ate grains at every meal. And in the first day, my constipation was gone. In a week, I noticed more energy, and I had 6 young children that I homeschooled at the time. Within a month, my dependence on antihistamines was gone. My sugar cravings gone. The health of my family just improved. I started seeing they didn't get sick all the time. They didn't have snotty noses constantly, and no more ear infections. One of my children's warts went away, and I knew that was from the bread, from the vitamin E, protecting those cells from viral invasion. Again,
Sue, I'm telling you, you have such an incredible story. And I want to get into the whole bread making and where you got this recipe. But also, you have Hashimoto's, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they have Hashimoto's, they can't have gluten in bread and they just go off of it, but not you.
That's not true. I mean, that's where the misnomer of people are not differentiating from the bread in the store and gluten, or the bread in the store and wheat. I tell people, I pick up a piece of paper and I'm like, what is this paper made of? Wood. But you wouldn't say it's a tree, would you? No. Then why are we saying that nasty stuff in the store is wheat? So I've probably had Hashimoto's all my life. Looking back, I can see evidence of it. But what I discovered is I have very low antibodies. My functional medicine doctor that sees me every year, that's the only time I go to the doctor is once a year. He said, your antibodies are incredibly low. I don't have high cholesterol, don't have heart disease, don't have chronic sinus congestion. These are things that Hashimoto's people typically are struggling with. I don't get sick a lot. He said, one doctor told me, he goes, you are the most high energy hypothyroid person I've ever met. So,
I love it.
I'm 70, so yeah, I get tired a little bit here and there, but not I do what God's called me to do, and then I learned how to rest. But it's 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 not gluten, and I've studied and studied and studied, and there's not the connection there. It's just not there. And it's definitely, I hear people say that gluten, the structure of gluten, which remember, gluten is the stretchy substance. It's from two proteins, but they say that it's the same structure as the thyroid hormone, so it's recognized as an enemy, and that's not true. I've looked up the chemical structure as a food scientist, and it's just not there. The connection is not there. What is there is low levels of vitamin D. What about potassium bromate blocking our iodine? What about toxins and gut microbiome? These are things that I'm working on to correct, and I'm praying for complete healing in that area. But like I said,
Amen.
I've had it. I can look back. I always was low temperature, all my life, even as a child, and just some other things I can tell, even before I was diagnosed. And some people say, well, if the bread's so healthy, how do you have it? Well, it's just one of those things,
Well, Sue, okay, let's talk about the recipe because I'm sure everyone wants to know. That's the $1 million question. So first, how did you come up with this recipe? And what's exactly in it?
Well, it's really nothing special. Prior to milling my own grain and making my own bread, I made my own bread for the most part. So I enjoyed making yeast bread and homemade bread and biscuits and muffins. So I just took my white flour recipe that I had been using and just changed it to freshly milled flour. So, Americans like sweeter, fluffier bread. So
I want to interrupt for a second. So I want to clarify for the listeners. When you say freshly milled flour, you're getting the grains, you have your own miller in your kitchen, and you are grinding it
yes, yeah.
yourself right before you bake it, right?
Yep. I don't know if you can see it. There's the mill.
You do have some millers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is wheat, so I'm just starting with the whole grain, and I take it and I just pour it in my grain mill. So I'm starting with the whole grain. See there? And I
Yes.
pour it in my grain mill, and it mills. My little grain mill that I use sits on my counter, and it mills about 1 pound in 30 seconds, a pound of flour, which is a little more than, it's about 3 cups of flour. So my recipe is just a basic yeast bread dough. It's flour, water, oil, honey, salt, and I use a little lecithin. It makes a little softer texture bread, and Americans and kids like a softer texture. And then yeast. That's it. And then I knead it.
But the flour that you're using, what are the grains that you are milling in the flour? Is it just like a few? Is it spelt? Is it like 10 different grains? What are you doing?
It depends on what I want to do. We here at Breadbeckers, so when we started selling mills in 1992, the first question was, where can I get wheat? So we became a grain packaging facility. We sell just about every kind of grain or bean here. But predominantly for bread making, yeast bread making, you need a hard wheat, a high protein wheat. There's a couple of varieties. There's hard red and there's hard white. Hard white's a little milder flavor. Hard red is a little nuttier flavor. There's spelt, there's kamut, there's rye, einkorn, emmer. These are all grains. We carry them here. Day in and day out, I pretty much make my bread out of hard red and hard white wheat. I do love spelt, and right now my favorite combination is hard red and kamut. But that's, it just depends on what you want to do.
So you can just grind one grain if you wanted to
if you wanted to.
I want to do rye, and I just grind rye.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Rye is a little weaker protein structure than wheat, so you can do it. Of course, it'll be a little denser and heavier, a little trickier to work with, just like einkorn and emmer. They're a little trickier to work with. So they're probably best mixed with some hard wheat, higher protein wheat. That's
what about berry?
Well, berry is, that's a B1 deficiency. That's the disease, berry.
Isn't there like a wheat called berry? And am I just thinking of something else?
I can't think of anything. Yeah, maybe you're thinking of buckwheat, maybe? No?
I could just be like crossing.
I know what No, I know what you're thinking. A lot of people call the grains in their whole form a berry. They'll call it a wheat berry or a rye
Okay,
berry.
okay,
Yeah. And those are grains that the chaff will shake right off, and
okay.
they're easy to clean. Yeah.
So, would you say for like someone that's just starting out,
hmm
what would you recommend them using?
I would recommend, because they're so much easier to work with, a hard red wheat and maybe a hard white wheat. Those are for your yeast bread. And then if you do want a pastry flour, like you want to make some cakes and cookies, maybe soft wheat. Soft wheat is a high moisture, lower protein. It doesn't make great yeast bread, but it does great for cakes, cookies, biscuits, and pie dough, which soft wheat is what grows here in the southeastern United States, which is why Southerners typically eat biscuits and not yeast bread, because that's the kind of wheat that grows here. Your hard wheats grow in the colder, drier climates that don't have a lot of rainfall during the growing season. So, and
Okay.
that, yeah.
Well, what about those that are on a yeast-free diet? Can you make the
Yeah,
bread without
you
yeast?
can make, there's lots of, you can do muffins and pancakes and
Okay.
tortillas, and there's lots of breads that don't use yeast as your leavening. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
So in the Bible, I think a lot of people are familiar with the Ezekiel bread,
Yes, yes.
right?
Yeah.
Now, isn't there like a brand called Ezekiel bread? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know how they get it that white and it tastes like cardboard. And it's good toasted with butter, I guess, but it's not very tasty. We do sell a mixture of grains and beans that we call our Ezekiel mix. Years ago, before I ever started milling and making my own bread, I came across a book called God's Recipe. The lady, I believe, has since passed away, and her book is out of print. I haven't been able to find it. But years ago, I found that recipe and wrote it in my little recipe book. And so when I started milling, I used it. She felt like God had given her the combinations of grains and beans. In the 4th chapter of Ezekiel, verse 9, God says to Ezekiel, take wheat, spelt, barley, millet, lentils, and beans, put them in one vessel, grind them, and make some kind of cake or bread out of it. So we have that mixture. We sell that as well. I do have an Ezekiel bread recipe in my book. I have a couple of books, the Essential Homegrown Flour book, and then my other little recipe collection here. And the recipe is there. But I love the Ezekiel mixture of grains and beans. I love to mill it and just make muffins with it, make pancakes with it. We make brownies with that mixture and sell it. And I'm like, complete protein wrapped in chocolate. Woohoo,
That's
And
so
yeah.
the Ezekiel, the biblical Ezekiel bread recipe, that is a complete protein.
Yes. Because your grains and beans and lentils and
Hmm.
millet are all there.
See, God knew what he was doing.
He did. He did. And if you count up the days, it looks like we don't know if Ezekiel ate anything else. That's when he laid on his left side so many days, his right side so many days, praying for Israel and praying for Judah. But if you count up the days, it's 463 days. He was instructed to eat the equivalent of an 8-ounce cake and a quart of water, drink a quart of water at a set time every day. Like I said, some people call my Ezekiel bread recipe a fasting bread. I don't necessarily fast on it, but a lot of people do. A lot of churches will do an Ezekiel fast, and they'll make this bread and eat it like that. And it's just really, really delicious. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So I have a question too. Why do so many people feel better when they eliminate grains from their diet? And I'm talking about whole grains.
Really?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, there's the paleo diet, so that's no grains at all. And I'm not talking about bread. I'm just talking about the whole grain. People feel so much better when they just eliminate these grains. Do you have
Well,
any idea why?
I think what is happening is what they're eliminating. Do you really think they're eliminating real whole grains or the healthy whole grain bread from the store? I mean, are they eliminating
They're eliminating
boiling
like the
grains?
whole, yeah, like rice and all of that.
Well, rice is processed. I don't know if you knew that. Even though you buy those little kernels in the store, they polish the bran off.
Okay, yeah. So spill the tea. What's the deal?
Okay, so rice has like I said, with wheat, you have the bran that protects the integrity of the seed. You have the endosperm, which is your protein and starch. That's the white flour. But your germ is down in the center, and that's where your fats and oils are, and your vitamin E and proteins and fiber and stuff. But in rice, The oils and the fats are in the bran. So when they remove the husk, kind of like shelling a nut, when you take the shell off, when they remove the husk that's on rice, that oil is exposed. And so brown rice spoils. So guess what they did? They started polishing that bran off. And with that, you lost your B vitamins, your fatty acids, and all your good fiber. And interestingly enough, how they originally determined that berry was a vitamin B1 deficiency was in the Asian culture when they started polishing the bran off, outbreak of berry there, because that white rice is basically protein and starch, solid or a lot of starch. So a lot of people, they'll give up that. But also, I think diets like the paleo and keto, they can be okay temporarily, but I,
I think that I've seen a lot of healing with a
yeah,
keto or a paleo diet. And I think that every diet has its place. Even the carnivore diet, I think it has its place in trying to figure it out and bringing the inflammation down. You know what I mean? For acute situations. I don't think they're great long term.
exactly. And that's what, because I've talked to so many people that went on the carnivore diet and they ended up with a fatty liver or all these
Mhm.
other health issues or keto. It's not sustainable. Your brain and your body, physiologically, I mean, go back to your high school biology and physiology books, that we are designed to use carbohydrates for energy. When we start using fats and proteins, that's a starvation mode. So, and I
Well,
get it, but I think long term it's very scary. I'm never for restricting a whole food group. That
so
is very concerning to me.
I feel better. I only eat white rice because I can digest it. I don't know if you know my history, but I literally almost died from IBS issues. I was on my deathbed. My dad was like mentally preparing to bury me. And thankfully, that's, 10 years ago. But I had a lot of gut issues, and I still, even till this day, I always opt for white rice because I can digest it better.
Yeah.
And what would you say to that and all the claims of, the whole rice has anti-nutrients and that whole narrative that, the shell or the outer laying has
Right,
the
the bran.
anti-nutrient.
You're
Yeah.
talking phytic acid and lectins and all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a misunderstanding. Phytic acid is found in the bran of many grains and beans, and it is a chelator, but it is a powerful antioxidant that your body needs, and it will chelate out heavy metals, protect you from over absorbing iron, especially in foods that are high in iron. So, and lectins the same. These are misnomers that just are outdated information. It used to be just like fiber. People thought that fiber was only good for making you poop. It didn't have any nutritional value until they found that, well, the B vitamins and all these nutrients are in that fiber, but then when it gets undigested and dropped into your bowels, it goes there. Your good gut microbiome, that's its food. And it starts
Yeah.
feeding and produces B vitamins and vitamin K and fatty acids that protect your gut. So, yeah, you might take a listen to my podcast, Sue's Healthy Minutes. I did a episode on rice, brown rice versus white rice.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
because white rice doesn't have the fiber there. And I will say that people that have cut out grains from their diet or have even been eating, commercially processed food, they may notice a little discomfort. Not all, I didn't, and a lot of people don't, but they may notice a little discomfort at first because that fiber is causing your gut to go woohoo, and causing increased peristalsis. Yeah.
If you've been eating a lower fiber diet for a while and you all of a sudden eat 30 grams of fiber, it's gonna, I know you have to gradually gradually increase your fiber. You can't just go from 0 to 100. Now, I do want to ask you, because you had mentioned at the beginning of the interview about oxidation, because all the flour is oxidized, as if, if you were to cut open an apple and then, you come back an hour later, it starts to brown. So that's what's happening to all of this industrial flour, right? It's oxidized and it's basically rancid.
Right. Well, they strip the bran and germ out, so it doesn't. So white flour doesn't have any of that oil in there anymore. So that's why they started making the white flour so that it wouldn't oxidize and go rancid. So it can sit on the shelf forever and ever.
So what's the deal with bugs in flour? Like why after so long do people experience those little bugs and flies in the flour?
Well, those come in from the store. They're little pantry moths. They like crackers and cookies and things like that. They like rice. They like white rice. They like brown rice. And so, you got to understand grains are grown in the outside in the field, and you can have little eggs or in the grain or on the grain that doesn't get noticed, and then it hatches out, and so you can get those pantry moths. But we package all of our grain with carbon dioxide gas, so that prevents anything from hatching out in the grain. So we guarantee that our grain is bug free.
Okay. And then let's talk about storage. So after, I'm assuming we don't have to store it in the refrigerator, but what if we mill our flour and we don't use it all? Should we put it in the fridge?
If you don't use it all, we recommend, and I have charts of telling you, how much grain to mill to give you how many cups of flour, so you can kind of guesstimate. Or a pound of grain makes a pound of flour, so you can, think about that as well. So the best is to mill your flour, bake your bread or muffins or pancakes or whatever. Mill your flour when you're ready to use it. Nutritional loss is minimal once the bread is baked. We actually had our bakery bread tested when we had a bakery. We don't have a bakery anymore, but it was astronomical, like 8% of your riboflavin, B1, 10% of your niacin, 10% of your folate, 100% of your vitamin E in one slice. So the nutritional loss is minimal once the bread is baked. But so you want to mill it when you're ready to use it. If you have some left over, or if I'm going on a trip and I can't take my mill with me, but I'm going to be able to cook, I'll mill flour and take it with me. I'll keep it in the refrigerator to reduce, the oxidation and the rancidity.
Okay. Yeah. Because I think that's probably going to be some people's ideas, like, oh, I'll just mill a bunch and I'll quote, meal prep, not meal prep.
Right. Yeah.
Because they want to get it all done at once. But you recommend doing it right before you bake.
I mean, the mill that I use, and so many of the mills, they're so easy. By the time I get the other ingredients ready, my flour's ready. It's not like I'm standing there waiting and waiting and waiting for the flour.
Okay. And before, nuts, seeds, grains, do they ever expire? Is that a myth if they're left whole intact?
I think if they're left in the shell, they can go a pretty long time. Grain, I know wheat stores pretty indefinitely. I say forever. Tombs in Egypt that were found to be 3,000-4,000 years old, they found kernels of grain in them. When they planted them, they sprouted. So what does that tell you? Now brown rice and oats are not as storable because of the oils being on the outer in the bran.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And for those wondering too, now you don't sell bread. You sell the whole grains, correct?
Right. We did have a bakery a number of years back, and we did sell bread here in our store, but no, we sell grain mills, and we sell just about every kind of grain or bean for you to mill and into flour for yourself. And of course, we teach you how to make bread. We have lots of classes. Yeah, we hold classes live here in our store. We have a lot on our YouTube channel, Breadbeckers. Yeah.
Okay, so if they're not in your state, they can still join the class and all of that.
Yeah, and we have over 150 co-ops all over the United States now that we help people bulk order their grains and get it a better shipping price. And they can go to breadbeckerscoop.com and find that.
Amazing. And so you don't need, I want to ask, what equipment besides the flour, right, or the grains, what equipment do you need?
You need a grain mill. So that's the most important. Of course, bread machine or great mixer makes it easy to mix up large batches of bread dough at a time. Or, I like the bread I made. I don't know if you can see it.
But you don't need an oven. Or excuse me, you don't need a bread maker. Can you do it in the oven?
I bake this in the oven. I just let my bread machine knead it. But you don't even need that for pancakes and muffins and things like that.
Okay, Sue, tell us where people can find you. Tell us what, they need and all that information in case they're interested in joining your classes or just making some bread.
So the best thing is go to our website, breadbeckers.com, as well as our YouTube channel at Breadbeckers. I have a podcast called Sue's Healthy Minutes. It's on any podcast channel, so they can look us up there. And then to check out our co-ops, go to breadbeckerscoop.com.
Amazing. I'm really considering getting a mill and starting this. I already talked to my husband about it before this interview. I was like, I think I'm going to start doing this. So stay tuned, you guys. This is going to be real interesting. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To check out more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com, and to email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.
Are you looking to reclaim your health? Tune into the Real Foodology podcast, hosted by me, Courtney Swan, integrative nutritionist and real food activist. I'm on a mission to transform our food system by challenging the corrupt practices that undermine our health and replace them with choices that genuinely support our well-being. Listen to Real Foodology podcast on your favorite podcast app. New episodes every Tuesday.